Okay,
We're live, Bob.
we're live. Hello, everybody. Happy 4th of July to everyone. Here I am floating over the planet. Really, it's just a Zoom background, but it's a little bit how I feel nowadays as I'm retired. And I am enjoying being in the woods, in the mountains. And I really wanted to speak to the people, my friends, around the world on this Independence Day in America. And what really moved me, as usual, it's amazing, is my dear beloved history teacher on Substack, known as Heather Scott Richardson. She talked about, from her unique perspective of American history, she talked about the sort of difference between the Declaration of Independence, which is the one that we're celebrating today, where they say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And she said, never mind that at that time, they were thinking that men only meant men, whereas we can read it as mankind or humanity. And actually, a more universal way of reading it would be all living beings, all living creatures. So we can expand humanity or the humane world of life. We can expand it to include all life, all beings. But anyway, for the moment in America, let's just stick with men. So all men are created equal. And he said that there's a self-evident truth for the writer of the Declaration of Independence, for Jefferson and for all those who signed it. And then she then mentioned how in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in 1863, so many years later, it was changed to say our nation was founded on the proposition that all men are created equal. So then Lincoln is putting it in terms of a proposition rather than a self-evident truth, because acknowledging that it was a proposal by the bodhisattvas who decided to be free of the English king and of the sort of unique thing in the West, anyway. She puts it that everybody is supposed to be in a hierarchy. And actually, in India, you had a caste system. In China, you had a class system. They don't usually call it caste, but it was like a caste system. And really, worldwide, you had a hierarchy where there were rulers and ruled. And you were born in one side or the other, And the idea that all are equal is revolutionary. And that's the really deepest thing about the American Revolution, not really just separating the colonies from the English kingdom, but saying that hierarchy and ruler and ruled are temporary arrangements, and they are only for utility, for usefulness, and when it serves the people as a whole, and life as a whole, actually. And Heather thinks that's unique in history, but actually, when the Buddha was questioned by some young Brahmins who were angry that these Brahmins were studying with him and his mendicant monastics, who he invented the concept of monasticism, actually, really, about 700-800 years before the Christians joined that. And it's unique to the two, really. The Hindus lately got monks from about 8th century, but uniquely Buddhists and Christians are the main monastic types on the planet. And they were annoyed. They were saying that the people were mad at them, their fellow Brahmins, which was the intellectual class, priestly class, in the caste in that time, because they were consorting with lower caste people in the mendicant order where all people were equal. And actually, there was a sense of seniority. If you were ordained earlier as a mendicant, you had a seniority over those who were ordained later, even if they were physically older than you. And so Buddha was overturning that kind of sense of seniority, hierarchy by seniority. And they completely shattered and challenged the hierarchy via caste. And so he then told the story of the origin of the first king. And it was a story where the first king was actually called Mahasamata, which means the great chosen one or the great selected one, if not elected one. And the idea was that the king was placed as a policeman, kind of over between by the people to prevent them from robbing each other. And he was there as long as he served that role, he didn't have to farm with them, and they would give him a share of their harvest because they were in a moment where they were robbing from each other, and they were robbing each other's harvests, and that was creating instability and unnecessary violence. So they promoted the king. And this was in total contradiction to the Brahminical caste theory that the kings were the arms of God, the priests were the mouths of God, the mouth of God, etc. The merchants were the belly of God, and the servers and the slaves and the servants were the legs and feet of God, and which was the hierarchy thing that Heather referred to. Anyway, coming back to America. So we started with a self-evident truth, according to the framers of the Declaration of Independence. And we came to Lincoln, to the proposition, and to him, he was acknowledging his opponents, actually, in the Civil War. And he was facing, as Heather pointed out in her posting yesterday, he pointed out he was facing people who were saying, no, they were superior to Blacks and Native Americans and any kind of Latin people and other subjugated people, and that they were superior to them. And that certainly the men thought they were superior to the females, to their wives, and so on. And Lincoln was therefore acknowledging that to them it was a proposition because they had seceded and they were fighting from outside with the Union, the United States, against the proposition that all humans were created equal, all men were created equal. And so he says proposition. He's still thinking, he's fighting in the Union for it being a self-evident truth himself, but he's acknowledging the opponent in the dialogue, right, in the debate. He was a lawyer. Anyway, what do we say today? She points out that we have secessionists and insurrectionists around us in the country today based on lies. And they are questioning this all men are created equal thing. And, when someone says Black Lives Matter because they're being systematically killed more than whites, they say blue lives matter or white lives matter. They want to act like that's somehow against them. And they matter more, obviously, if they are shooting blacks in the back 7 times when they would not shoot a white person in the back 7 times for trying to get in his car or trying to resist being tasered or whatever the prison are doing. They are not treating him as an equal living being. So now what do we do on this 4th of July, 2021, of the Common Era? What do we do? Is it a self-evident truth? Is it a proposition? Or what? And I decided that today, my talk today to you, my sharing today to you is, it is a vow for us. It is a determination. And a determination becomes an oath. We hear from the secessionists, insurrectionists, they call themselves oath keepers and this kind of thing. They talk about solemn oaths. Well, it is our oath that all life is created equal. And that actually is the vow of the Bodhisattva, what we call in Buddhism the Bodhisattva, the one who is a hero and a shiro. That's not the male or female, hero or shiro, for the equal access to enlightenment of all beings, even though different ones have different abilities and will attain that enlightenment in different lives or different times of life or in different situations, but all have access, all have the ability. And actually, from the Buddha's view, Buddhist science's view, all animals have that ability. Every chimpanzee, every baboon, every crocodile, every insect, every bacteria, I guess not viruses, if they really aren't alive. They certainly are behaving like they're alive nowadays, but morphing and changing form and trying to propagate themselves. but they're considered a mechanism, I guess, if they're not alive. Nature is not alive, right? Nature is a mechanism according to modern science, which is also, I think, inaccurate, actually. I think it's not correct. So, but never mind. But all life is equal, actually. And all life has the capacity to become enlightened, to become sort of the supreme form of life that a being can adopt, which is a form of life that is completely adapted to all the other forms of life. It is completely feels itself, it's responsible for itself as an individual, as a relatively separate being or conventionally separate being, but at the same time, it experiences itself as the same as all life, as all the beings, and therefore feels how they feel. Like President Clinton, feels their pain, like any saint or empath, And that's what enlightenment is called, someone who knows the nature of reality fully and totally by being all reality. So they know it by being it. And therefore, since reality includes sensitive beings who are feeling pain and pleasure, happiness and suffering, and are struggling or are happy or are free, whatever they are, feels all of those beings' feelings. And it actually, luckily, is able to do that because by knowing reality, that being knows that the deepest feeling of all life is bliss energy, is that kind of enlightened energy. That's what it is, because what life really is the energy of bliss, infinite, inexhaustible energy of bliss, which is more than the energy of the sun or the moon or any other thing. Oh dear, I believe my friend will take that. So anyway, I want to discuss the quality of us all, our independence in ultimate reality. Well, this is life, Let's not be upset by it. Independence of reality. At the same time, we can invest ourselves in the interdependence of all reality, of all living reality, especially. We don't really need to worry about immobile reality, what they call the non-moving. I think in Buddhist science, they call moving and not moving, or sensitive and not sensitive. So the sensitive part of reality is the life part, in their view. It moves, it's sensitive. And, you can argue about animals and plants and viruses and bacteria and whatever you like, and there's no dogma about it. So we might discover other forms of life that we didn't know about. So, the quantum people think so. The quantum mathematician types are into 11 dimensions, where reality beings in those realities see our 4-dimensional reality, 3 dimensions of space and time, and 3 dimensions of time. You could say 6 dimensions, or they see that as like way beneath where they are. And we are incapable of seeing those who are at the higher dimensions. They say, which is why the working quantum people who are not the mathematical theorists, they kind of don't believe in that, actually, because they say they can't experiment about them, so why should they accept them? As you know that. So anyway, today we're very happy because we're separating our freedom, and our freedom, and particularly, of course, we meant their freedom from the hierarchical royal system of a king that sort of had a divine right. And the image of that from Thomas Paine, which I love so much, is a real thing. Thomas Paine makes also excellent reasoned arguments. Actually, I can announce here today, I'd like to announce very soon, as soon as I can organize myself in my computer things, I'm going to go on Substack myself. I'm going to be neighbor of my beloved Heather Scott Richardson, and I'm going to publish on Substack daily or several times a week or however many I manage. Essays like this, and some will be live streams like this. Some will be written essays, and I will launch this, I hope, within the next couple of weeks. I'm planning to. So I can announce that here, and I'm calling it Common Sense because in honor of Thomas Paine. And the image in my mind is, he makes the image there of the crown of the king, the divine king, the idea of a divine king. And he says that it has jewels in it, that crown. And he says what democracy means is you smash that crown. Or ideally, a good king themselves smashes it, because heavy lies the head that wears the crown, the burden of kingship. A really good one who feels that they are serving their people. They are the humble servant of all their people. They don't want to have all responsibility, only be the only one to have all. They want everyone to have all responsibility. So the really good king is ready to shatter any crown, actually. That's the great thing about there is a good kind of kingship. And that, Bodhisattva, Shiro or hero, they're ready to shatter. Any mom will shatter her crown for her child, and a good dad will too. And so the thing is that you shatter the king's crown, was Thomas Paine's image. And then the shards of all the jewels, it's a simile, so you can't figure it out mathematically, but all the shattered components of all the jewels, like a little small, let's just say a little tiny jewel, is given to every citizen. So in a sense, it's acknowledging that they have the sovereignty. It's the jewel of sovereignty. And sovereignty there means that they are ruling and they are responsible. And they're, co-ruling and co-responsible, they can say. But so the king is too. King has ministers. You can see soap operas about different kings and emperors that was getting overthrown by ministers and generals, and people riots and things. So any king who thinks they're completely isolated, separate in their harem or their palace usually gets overthrown rather quickly, or sooner or later, or their heirs do. So that's a beautiful image. You take the crown of the King of England, gathered from jewels. Diamonds were not found in England, by the way, from their colonial and imperial conquests. Jewels from India and Africa and around the world. But anyway, a wonderful crown. It's a wonderful thing. It's in the Tower of London. You can see it. It's a pretty thing. And, shatter it, and everybody has a crown. Everybody has a jewel in the crown of their head. And that's the jewel of universal responsibility. To use now His Holiness, my Guru, Danjali, mentioning him for a purpose, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he advocates that there be such a thing, people adopt out of love and compassion and bravery, what he calls universal responsibility, which is a small thing. Like someone asked him once, "What are you doing to save the world, Your Holiness?" And he thought for a second, then he said, "Well, when I leave a room, I turn off the light." He said, and that's universal responsibility. It doesn't mean necessarily you have to go and fling yourself in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square, like that brave man did back in 1989. But it means that you always take, you see garbage in the street, you pick it up if it's not, unless you have some other important thing that you can't stop. But as you see someone suffering in the street, you're concerned for them. You ask them what can be done. You take them somewhere. You give them something. If it's not going to be something harmful to them, that they're going to get with it, and whatever it is you do, and that's universal responsibility. So it's sort of meaning that you, as a free being, because everybody else is also free, you choose to take responsibility for the condition of the beings of life. And that's what we really do. That's the best investment of our independence. And in fact, that is American exceptionalism, actually. That's where it comes from as a country. If we are perhaps the first country to put in a sort of physical constitutional document that we're guaranteeing that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That means that that's our exceptionalism. So they have a right to life. It's not like we're kind to let them live. And that really means capital punishment is really wrong. It can happen in self-defense, where to defend yourself or some other, and the only way you could in some case was someone else would lose their life. That could be, that is defensive killing. But once you have someone in your power and you have them in a so-called rehabilitation system, to then execute them, because eye for an eye, tooth for tooth sort of routine is actually not Right. The eye for an eye doesn't mean that you should go and take an eye for if you lose an eye. It means that you shouldn't kill someone if you lose an eye, or if they lose a tooth, you shouldn't kill the person who took your tooth. You shouldn't take their life for it. So it's actually more of a restrictive thing than a prescriptive thing, like go get an eye for an eye. It's not really saying that. Moses is the wonderful altruism of Judaism and loving kindness of Judaism is misunderstood by Moses saying in a tribal context where you had blood feuds, only a tooth for a tooth, only an eye for an eye, right? Not more. And, he didn't. And in other parts of the thing, thou shalt not kill. He's giving the more. All right, which Rabbi Jesus also did, where he was rabbi, considered rabbi by the Jews, his fellow contemporaries. He considered himself to be Jewish. He was Jewish, and he was therefore a rabbi. Rabbi just means a teacher, right? A rebbe. And he also told more about the more, So that is what we're celebrating today. Love and compassion. And when I woke up, one thing I woke up, of course, I am an independent politically, but lately, especially since Nixon, I have been voting with the Democrats because the Republicans, unlike when they were founded by Lincoln and company, where they were liberating people from slavery, and they were really good, actually. And there still are good Republicans who consider nature, like Roosevelt making parks, national parks, like Rockefeller saving the Palisades from people who are dynamiting them to make concrete. They would have all been gone, all the Palisades, and the Hudson would have been a lake or something. I don't know what would have happened. And so those kind of good Republicans who are genuine conservatives, meaning trying to preserve what is good, These I would vote with them in some context, absolutely. But those who have taken over the Republican Party and are trying to control America for the benefit of their own wealth and trying to use America, libertarians, this type of people, anarchists, people who want to just use the public good for their private gain and are ruthlessly trampling over others, like the slave owners were in the first 70 years of America. Like they were in the government, and they were corrupting the all men are created equal, and they were reducing it to a proposition, and they were not agreeing with it. And they didn't allow suffrage to their wives, for that matter, or women, any women. And they didn't allow, of course, Blacks, Native Americans, Latinos, French American, whatever other people were there from whatever other place. Didn't allow them any suffrage, right? So that's what's been going on lately. Ever since Ronald Reagan opened his campaign in 1980 in this town in Mississippi, where civil rights workers were killed by Ku Klux Klan people, and talked about states' rights in the very context of that. That means stirring up this kind of thing that we had laid to rest, but was still an element. But they wanted to stir that up. And why did they want to stir that up? This group that gradually took over until they finally now kind of own the Republican Party, except for like 6 votes in the Senate and 5 votes in the House. They voted themselves. They declared themselves, and by the way they reacted to the free and fair election that we just had. And they're still doing it. And so I've been against them. However, one thing, I woke up feeling compassionate and sympathetic to them, actually, and that whole faction, including also the evangelical, most of the evangelical Christians. I was feeling very sympathetic to them. And the one clarion call in my mind was, go on a diet about Fox News, AON Network, Breitbart, and this sort of publication, and the things on the internet that are like that, to sort of say, well, okay, I believe what I believe, But you know what? I'm temporarily, so I don't need reinforcement all the time from those sources. And the reason I'm saying go into that, I'm not saying you have to agree with me about the lie, the big lie that it is a lie. You can believe it. You're free and you can invest in fiction. It's okay. But what's wrong with your being on those Fox News 12 hours a day, watching those things, someone like the screaming Alex Jones, the late Limbaugh and people like that, is what they wanted, what they're trying to do. They're not trying to inform you of anything, actually. They're trying to make you and keep you angry. They want to stir up your cortisol, neurotransmitter called cortisol. That's very, very bad for your circulatory system and your heart and it could lead to strokes and heart attacks. It does. People who are hair trigger angry in their lives tend to have strokes and heart attacks more than other kinds of people. So yeah. So the point is, it's very bad for your health. It's bad for your sleep. It's bad for your relationships. And it makes you feel bad all the time. It's like you feel kind of congested in your solar plexus, and your throat feels tight, and you grit your teeth, maybe grind them at night and have to go to the dentist, and you can't really have fun. You don't really feel relaxed to have fun, Even you go to a football game or something, then you get really angry at the opponent, scream about them, and you want to kill them, you get like that. We all do. I do too. I watch Terminator movies, and I like rumpus movies, I must admit. Some of them, My wife criticized me for being too addicted to them, action movies. But the point is, and so maybe watch an action movie, but don't watch all those things, because then why do they want to make you angry? Because when you're angry all the time, you don't think clearly. Therefore, you will be easily deceived, more easily deceived than you would normally be with your good common sense. And because you're sort of angry, so you're excited, And so they have studies, psychologists have studies that when someone really loses their temper, they lose 85% of their practical judgment. Like they'll run a car into something, they'll wreck they'll break their own dishes, They'll do things that they'll very much regret. And we've all done that. I've done all of it. Not holier than thou. I also still lose my temper. But the point is this, the reason they want you to lose your common sense is that they want to rule you, and they want to impoverish you and take your money, and they want to take your job, pay someone else less for doing the same thing. They want to destroy your union. They want to pollute your neighborhood. They have polluted and want to keep polluting your air. And they generally want to subjugate you, things that a government that would be serving you would be a government of the people, by the people, for you, the people, your people. So a government that would be serving you, things they would not allow them to do. So they want to take over that government and make it just serve their private interests. They want to privatize highways, roads, bridges, medical services, and make money out of it. They don't want to heal your sickness. They want to make money out of keeping you sick. They don't, therefore, prevent giving you excess sugar and everything and bad drinks with carcinogenic sweeteners in them. From Donald Rumsfeld's old company before he was defense secretary. Poisonous aspartame. And you think you're not gaining weight, but you're actually poisoning yourself. And they let you do that because they've taken over the regulatory agency that would prevent them from doing that. So, and they want to perpetuate this minority rule. Lincoln said, if you take a democracy, you destroy a democracy by having long-term minority rule, where the minority uses tricks and deceptions to go against the will of the majority. And what you get when you do that, Lincoln said in his speech, is anarchy and then despotism. Because once there's anarchy, people will become feeling very insecure and unsafe because there'll be other people behaving crazy. And then they'll have a dictator. They'll want a dictator. They'll go back to King George or King Donald or King Vladimir or King Xi or whoever, whichever, King Jair, whichever country it might be. They will. So they want to fool you. And if you're angry all the time, then you can be fooled. And then they keep repeating the lie, and then you won't think critically about it, how silly it is, you know. So not there, I'm jumping too far, because I'm only trying to just say, just those things that make you angry and get you hepped up, you have to go out and do something and execute somebody or do something or say something crazy every time. Then you realize, oh, wait, this is just agitating me. And, you know, I should be calm. So calm down, enjoy, let the fireworks blow up in the sky. Don't have fireworks going off in my nervous system all the time. So just please be calm. You can't be calm if you watch those hep up things all the day long on whatever medium it's sent at you. Even some guy actually screaming in a practically epileptic fit. I only once or twice watched that thing for a short time. It was so scary. The guy who shrieks, like that all the time. What is that? I mean, I admire his stamina, actually, to scream and shout like that, actually, as I say. But the effect it's having on us, our mirror neurons, as they call it, of mimicking what we see in front of us, is to agitate us. So don't be agitated. If you want to be some kind of neoconservative, if you want to be a pink supremacist, or whatever you want, go ahead. But do it calmly so that your health won't suffer. And actually, we can think more clearly, and then you'll be more effective. Even if you're doing a mistaken thing, you'll do it better. And probably you'll be less mistaken. Well, you'll be doing better because you'll be less mistaken, actually, because you'll be having better common sense. How about that? So anyway, that's my opening discussion to those who might consider me their opponent. And I'm happy to debate with them also. Very happy to do that. So I don't have to always be just trying to be mild. I will also debate. It's so silly, these attitudes that they have, you know. And these, what they call, you know, they were invented by manipulators who worked for minority ruling people, like the cigarette industry, that knew they were killing people, but they knew that they had the science for that and they had the medical for that, but they suppressed the knowledge of it and they told the opposite lie, that it was really good for you. And they did it for decades while people died of cancer. And then the fossil fuel industry is the very worst example of that. And they're still trying to do that. They're trying to prevent us from leading the whole world toward confronting the real enemy that confronts us and China and India and Russia and Europe and Africa and South America and Australia and the penguins, everyone, which is the giant cloud of carbon in the sky and other greenhouse gases that are raising the heat level, average heat levels on the planet, where all the temperate zones will be uninhabitable in less than 50 years, and possibly some of them already in 20 years. I have wealthy friends in California and Oregon and Washington State who leave for Hawaii or other places in the summer when the fires start going, because although they're not living in the fire areas and they have very comfortable mansions in other places, although sometimes the fire will go there too, but mainly not. But the air is unbreathable. And it's actually not just unbreathable, it's really harmful. It causes lung disease. So they have to get their children out of there. And those who can't afford to, well, they have air conditioning filters and whatever, but they're exposed. And it's harming their health very much. And if it goes on within maybe a decade, definitely I think by mid-2030s, there'll be climate refugees. They'll be heading for greener place where there's water. There's a huge drought coming up the Pacific coast all the way to British Columbia, that will not relent because it has to do with the higher temperature in the ocean and the death of different species and coral reefs and planktons and all. I mean, it's just terrible what is going on. You know, that little Swedish girl who's the oracle of Mother Earth. She's like she's like a person standing up for Jesus, but she's standing up for Mother Earth, for Persephone, for Prithvi, for Gaia. And she's standing up for all the species of animals who are undergoing the sixth great extinction, which is heading us to our extinction. This COVID that we have, we would never have that if it wasn't that the habitat of the other animals who used to share their diseases with each other is so wrecked and destroyed that their diseases are jumping from life form to life form when we're getting these zoonotic viruses and bacteria and dreadful things. So she's speaking for them, and she is not alarmist. And you can't dismiss by saying Asperger's syndrome or some stupid dogmatic label. She's perfectly capable, brilliant, very courageous, a true Shiro. One of the great Shiros on our planet, should have received Nobel Peace Prize last year. Hopefully will receive it soon. And because she's saying, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the house is on fire. Our house, our planetary home is on fire. And what do you do when the house is on fire? You do not sit around thinking, well, maybe it'll just burn itself out someday. No, you run out of the house, you call the fire department, you throw buckets of water, you shoot your fire extinguishers. That's all you do. That's your emergency. You don't cook breakfast first, even. You put out that fire. And we're not doing that. Our leaders are not allowing us to do that because they have been too much bought and corrupted. Our banks, our politicians. The famous joke? When you know the economy is really in bad shape, you know that ExxonMobil will have laid off 100 congressmen. And not to mention their lobbyists. And did you know, by the way, as far as corruption of our government, which the great Elizabeth Warren is the bravest one, again, a Shiro, to talk about, we pay out of our tax money $20 billion, sometimes $50 billion, $40 billion to the fossil fuel industry since the 1940s. We have paid, maybe the 30s actually, but definitely at least the 40s. And with that, the equivalent in today's money of 20 to 50 billion we pay. We may still have it on the books today. Biden said he would cut it, but I don't know if he's been able to. I don't know whether it's the House of Representatives that awards it or who does it. And you realize that their lobbying operation, which are all the fossil fuel lobbyists, thousands of them, hundreds in Washington itself, just blocks from the Congress. They have better offices, better computers, more assistants than the Congress people do. They write legislation, they write amendments to legislation, they go down to the Congressman office, take them to expensive lunches. They're paid higher salaries by far than the congresspersons. And they put in for that subsidy on top of all their cheap tax rebates and any other things, is that subsidy. And only 1/10 of that subsidy pays. I'm sure they don't spend more than $2 billion on their lobbying because they only give the congresspeople 30,000, 50,000 for their election. 100,000, the real key ones, like person like Mitch McConnell, or a person like the guy in West Virginia who always votes for them. And so we are paying them to deceive us that they are destroying our habitat. Our habitat, not that just animal, not the owl, not the eagle, not the bear, not the wolf, the human habitat. They are destroying it. And they all want to join Jeff and Elon and what's his name, the British guy, the Virgin guy. They want to join them and go to Mars. because they know they're wrecking this planet. They're getting the max out of this planet and they're leaving. They're like the guys in the Avatar movie who don't mind wrecking the tree of life there to get their, whatever it is, unobtainium, it's called, actually. That's kind of a joke of James Cameron. Unobtainium. Okay? So we're paying them to deceive us that it's not really happening, that Exxon wants you to be happy, and all this stuff, or Mobil, Chevron, whoever it is, BP, Beyond Petroleum, sure. And the point is, they have the money. They could spend money and they could put it into a new backbone, electricity line. They could put endless solar and windmill and geothermal and actually maybe even clean nukes, small clean nukes, which are probably very useful. Sorry to be heretical as far as Greenpeacers go, but not big, ugly, dangerous ones with water cooling and a lot of spent uranium, but the newer kind that are cheaper, smaller, but they pump it out with no carbon effluent, no carbon emission, zero for decades. Then there's some horrible plutonium, but we can drop that down into the magma. just drill down, get Elon to drill straight down with his drilling machine there. A couple, 3-4 miles, way below the water, not way below where they store the fracking poison water, which they're turning our aquifers into poison water storage. The fossil fuel people, because they don't mind wrecking everything, because they don't want to think beyond the immediate dollar, the immediate moment's dollar themselves, because they are brainwashed into a theory of non-existence, that they just are nothing and there'll be no consequence of them when they die. They don't know they're going to be reborn on the planet in some radioactive, horrible, carbon-infested place. Anyway, not carbon-infested. That's good. That's trees and plants, carbon-infested, and some kind of other horrible infestation. So, point is, they're like that. And then I want to speak to the evangelists also. And dear Jesus, after he gave Sermon on the Mount about take off your shirt, take off your coat when they ask for your shirt, and yet you begrudge a little bit welfare payments to some indigent people, some people who haven't managed to get a proper education, who have been discriminated against, who are like depressed and oppressed, and yet they tell you take your coat off when they're asked for your shirt. Jesus told you that. Turn the other cheek and they slap you, not shoot them back. He told you that. But then he told an important thing afterwards, because then you might think, well, later we'll do that. And we have this as ends to means to an end. Then right after that, he said, when I get up there on the right hand of the Father, said, some people will come to me and say, Lord, Lord, we have done great deeds of power in your name. Now let us into, the pearly gates. And I will say unto them, get thee gone, ye evildoer, I know ye not. Because instead of taking off your coat when asked for your shirt, instead of turning the other cheek when slapped in the face, you did deeds of power, meaning you used my name to behave contrary to my teaching, which is a teaching of love, kindness, gentleness, nonviolent response, helpfulness, generosity, charity, love. You took my name to do the opposite, to foment hatred, to foment violence, to suppress and oppress people, and refuse to be generous with them. So get ye gone, ye evildoer, I know ye not. So the idea that just when you go Jesus, Jesus, yes, when you go Jesus, Jesus in church, maybe you'll feel the oneness with the great hero, the great divine being. divine because I'm embodying love. But then you go back to acting some other way. Then there'll be a balance when you die. And that balance will not be in your favor when you have been behaving, supporting the lie, supporting racist segregation, and in the guise of supporting life, taking life, harming people, and supporting people who obviously are harming people. Oh, let's invade Iraq. Oh, when we drop a bomb in Baghdad, we'll have the rapture. Jesus will come back. Yeah, that's just read Matthew. Don't read a bunch of other nonsense. Read Matthew. Don't listen to a bunch of crazy preachers. Read Matthew yourself and see if he says, bomb thy enemy. I don't think so. And, really, I'm a Christian myself. He also didn't say, if someone in the future meets a teaching of some nice person called Buddha or Confucius or Lao Tzu or Zoroaster or Muhammad, if you ever meet anybody like that, kill them. They're all going to hell anyway. He never said that. He said, only through me do you get to the Father. And he knew that the people he was talking to thought of a loving Father, love as the Father, actually. He didn't think they were, he was not referring to Christianity because it didn't exist at that time. So he's not saying if you're not a Christian, you're doomed. He didn't say that. He didn't say if you're not a Jew, you're doomed. He didn't say that. He just said me. And he was breaking Jewish rules, healing on the Sabbath and consorting with regular people rather than, some kind of rule-based clan, tribal behavior. Okay? So just because I like Buddha and I am a Buddhist as well as a Christian, and I'm very, in the case of Judaism, I admire, I would like to be Jewish, but they don't admit you. That you're born that way, which is kind of good in the sense that doesn't make them try to convert everybody and bother them. That's nice. The over-converting of others because you're feeling a little insecure in yourself the way you're living. You're not really necessarily living up to the teacher, the great hero, Shiro, who founded the tradition. So then you're going to go out and spread dogmas and increase market share for your organization. That's not really what they were up to, those people. They were up to love. And they were evoking the love in the heart of people. And you are all loving people yourself. You love somebody. And maybe you don't love yourself enough by the way you've been miseducated, possibly. You've been put down too much. So I'm not putting you down. I'm saying love yourself. Love Jesus. Share his love for everyone, everything, every living thing. Okay? And let's get back to our vow to have a life and a society and a time and enjoy it and be happy, where all life is equal. All humans are equal. Black lives do matter. Red lives do matter. Yellow lives do matter. Pink lives do matter. I don't even think there are any white ones. Really, I don't. Look at this. This is not white. It's sort of like beigey pink, a little blotchy, beigey pink. So be a pink. You could, if you want to be a bit pink supremacist, go ahead. But not really. You should be a multicolored supremacist, rainbow supremacist. It's one of my dreams before I die. I really do hope to see the White House painted rainbow colors. Like those Greek white pillars. By the way, the Parthenon in Athens was totally polychromatically painted. Those statues and gods and goddesses, they were not these white bronze like anemic looking things, everything white, white, white. That was just the base stone. They were painted. The paint wore off from the rain. And they're looking anemic, like those statues. But they were not white. They were multicolored. And so we should have a multicolored house. Rainbow house, it should be, really. If I was president in my next life, I'll run for president. Because even a pink person, or maybe I'll be lucky enough to be wearing black so I can finally dance, like maybe sing the blues, which I love to do, or be a great basketball player or something. I would love that. But anyway, I run for president, I promise. And I want to only occupy a rainbow house, not a White House. It's so boring, that White House. It's a dump, really. We're not in Greece. And Greece was not the head of everything in the ancient time. No way. It was backward compared to North Africa, compared to India, China, Persia. It's a dinky little country where they ate a lot of fish and drank Retsina, which wasn't exactly Bordeaux. Anyway, okay. That's what I'm just fooling around. But the point is, love is life. Love is where we are. I'm going to close by reading a poem my dear friend Jonathan Cott turned me on to. Because he heard my name of my book was Wisdom is Bliss, a new book of mine will come out next month. And I'm going to read it. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to get up for a second, but don't turn it off. I'll be right back in 30 seconds. Less than 30 seconds, I'll keep talking. No, keep talking. Don't turn it off, please.
No. We've got 50. What? We've got 48 people watching live on YouTube.
Okay, good. But I don't want to stop. I want to read this poem as an end. Okay.
Please do. Go as long as you like. Everyone's enjoying it.
I'm just flipping out with this poem. I have been flipping out for several weeks, thanks to Jonathan Cott, my great buddy, great literary critic, better than Harold Bloom, really. Okay, and it's from the Four Zoads, whatever that is. I'm not a Blake scholar, but I'm trying to catch up. And there are these three poems, and a woman who's therefore more cheery than me, that I'm capable of being, who's super blissed out. She is singing to a bunch of weird creatures, like sort of old deities or titans or ogres, I don't know what that Blake is worried about, with funny names like Horizon and this and that and the other. And Zoaz even. And she's singing with a lute, a stringed instrument. She's singing to cheer them up, to try to help them find happiness and stop being grumped out and being all agitated all the time, like I hope we all can be, and enjoy the day and stop our plots and our worries and our anxious freakouts, okay? Or do them without being anxious or whatever, okay? So anyway, and the first verse sets the setting a little bit just in one verse. There's 20 verses before this, but I'm just doing one verse, which is kind of like the angry, big kind of titanic sort of being that has fallen from on high and feeling freaked out, which I think is one of the dominant themes, unfortunately, in our nation and in the world. Okay, by the patriarchal, especially the male chauvinists, the patriarchal societies all over the world, where the men are supposed to be in charge, and they've been doing too much violence to nature, too much violence to each other, too much violence to themselves, and therefore they're losing their grip, and they're libertarians or anarchists or dictators, or they just because they don't have enough fun is their real problem, because they're not nice enough to their women. Basically, you can't have fun if your women are not happy, because they are happiness of the world. They are. They are. There's no one better suited for happiness than the loving woman. They're the best. We are like catching up, We're like, we wish. Furious and terrible, they sport and rend the nether deeps. The deep lifts up his rugged head, and lost in infinite humming wings, which is the vibration of life around where they fall. Because by falling in the deep, they think they've lost their throne, but actually there's the vibrant wings of all kinds of life humming around them. There is no nothingness deep. There's life, and they hum, and they feel that it's like humming wings. And lost in infinite humming wings, vanishes with the cry. The fading cry is ever dying, but the living voice
Stay tuned, everyone. It looks like we lost Bob for a moment. Thanks, everyone. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. It looks like the internet over in Woodstock may have gone out. So give us a moment while we get to the bottom of it. Thanks, everybody. Give us a moment. We're going to give him a call on the landline. He'll be back in just one moment. We just spoke to him. He apologizes. We will keep this going until he returns, everyone. And we will trim out this pause when the live stream ends. But just give us a moment while we get Professor Thurman logged back on. For those of you just tuning in, we're working through a little bit of a technical obstacle. This is Justin Stone Diaz. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, but stay tuned. He plans to come back once he's figured out the obstacle. We'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back. Welcome back, Bob. Everyone's still here. We only lost one person, so let me get you back on Spotlight.
I'm back. Terrible.
We only lost 2 people while you were away. We were still at,
Okay,
let's look.
so sorry, everybody. I was just doing the living voice is ever living in its inmost joy. Okay. So now, middle next verse. Sorry, I got agitated myself. Okay. Arise, you little glancing wings, and sing your infant joy. Arise and drink your bliss, for everything that lives is holy, for the source of life descends to be a weeping babe. Let me read that again. For there's no punctuation the way Blake writes it. So in here, this verse just absolutely has been wiping me out for a month since dear Jonathan told me about it. Arise, arise, you little glancing wings, and sing your infant joy. Now on Independence Day, sing your joy today and tonight. Arise and drink your bliss. For everything that lives is holy. For the source of life descends to be a weeping babe. For the earthworm renews the moisture of the sandy plain. Isn't that neat? It really is so great. And now, this is now what I leave you with. And now my left hand I stretch to earth beneath and strike the terrible string. I wake sweet joy in dens of sorrow, and I plant a smile in forests of affliction, and wake the bubbling springs of life in regions of dark death. Okay, happy 4th of July, everyone. I'm sorry you had to wait. And, of course, this form of live stream, it would be great if people had questions or they want to make comments. And we must develop one where we can do that, even with a larger number of people. But
we had one question, Bob.
Well, you did? Oh, good.
Well, one was about the pendant you're wearing. They want to know what is the pendant?
This is a jade Buddha, which is a greenish color. So I connected with Amoga Siddhi, which means the nothing in vain Buddha, the nothing futile Buddha, the all-accomplishing wisdom Buddha, which actually, you know where it comes from, this miracle working, wonder working, miraculous Buddha, of the 5 sort of like celestial Buddhas that are involved in certain types of meditation, and that they help us in certain types of meditation. And this jealousy is the afflicted and addictive energy of jealousy. You know, green-eyed monster, ironically and fascinatingly and synchronistically, we associate jealousy with greenness. So the green-eyed monster. But when the energy of jealousy is taken hold of by blissful wisdom, it turns into the ability to create miracles. And that's because we are social beings. We are loving, interactive, interdependent, mammalian human beings. And we, among different forms of all life is interdependent and interactive, but among forms of them, we're the ones who have become the most highly conscious of that, short of being a Buddha and a few different types of divinities. There's various kinds, and some of them get diluted off in some sort of isolated bubble state of pleasure or extinction, sort of numb, that's not being there kind of thing, like deep sleep sort of routines. And but there are some who are really also very close to Buddhahood. But we are the life form, as a general rule, most accessible to Buddha. We have advantage on even those deities, those kinds of gods, like Brahma, the Brahma gods, as they're called in Sanskrit, the pure gods. We are more, because we are closer to the suffering. We're more sensitive, more vulnerable, and that vulnerability to suffering of ours gives us a stronger motive to develop our love and compassion and be more activist about it. And that evolves us more quickly toward the full state, the Buddhahood state, the state of bliss, joy, indivisible, bliss, freedom, indivisible, blissful interdependence, blissful interbeing, to use the great Thich Nhat Hanh expression. All right.
And there's 2 more questions, and I typed them in the chat section. One was from Kelly.
I didn't see that. Okay.
One from Kelly, who I think is one of the Vajra Yoginis.
Oh, good. Oh, of course. Wonderful. Where's chat? Oh, there's chat. Yes. Okay. Yes, Kelly. What does it say? Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine. Well, Thomas Paine, individual, this is the thing, you see. Ultimately, when you're a Buddha, Kelly, and you may already be, for all I know, but I can just, so I myself, like when I become a Buddha, it's this inconceivable thing that will happen, where I will be the whole. I will feel I am the whole. That means you and everybody else. I will feel that. But I will enjoy being the same as everybody else, myself, in my own special way. So it doesn't, you don't fall into a lump in the whole in such a way where you don't individually experience on a living level, that is not sort of a theoretical, abstract level, but on a living level, you experience the joy of being one with the whole in your own way. So as a continuum, and therefore that's impossible. So you're both one with everyone and seeing things and experiencing it from everyone's perspective simultaneously. And yet you enjoy doing that from your own perspective, uniquely. So that's inconceivability, but that makes it wonderful. But it takes you have to be able to, as F. Scott Fitzgerald, another enlightened artist, wrote. He said, the sign of a person of a better intelligence, he said, is the ability to hold 2 opposite things in their mind at the same time. I was so struck by that because, my definition of Buddhahood has always been, in some context, the extreme tolerance of cognitive dissonance. Not collapsing the dissonance to this side or to that side, reconciling by holding them both simultaneously. But even that doesn't, the other thing is it's inexpressible, of course. So there's no ultimate answer to all of that, let's say. So pain himself, what's he talking about? I think he was sensing, because I think he was a bodhisattva, an enlightenment Shiro hero. I think he was sensing that, you see, when the king is thought of as being above and beyond and isolated from others, that's a sort of excessive level of individualism. And when the king, however, shatters her, or king or queen, shattered her or his crown to give everyone the jewel of sovereignty, then, but they have special enjoyment of that because they had the crown and they gave it away. So they enjoy that giving in their own way. And so each one who receives it, then they can say, oh, okay, this is the first, now I'm going to go get everybody else's jewel away from them, and I'm going to be like the isolated king. And they'd go in the wrong direction toward extreme individualism. Or they could say, oh, this is the jewel based on the generosity of the king who shattered their crown and who gave the sovereignty to all, shared it with all. And so I must, now I have a little bit of it, but I must mentally adopt the openness to be giving it away all the time. That will make it shine all the more. So, it's like democracy. Like Winston Churchill famously said, democracy is the worst possible form of government, except for all the others. It said, that was the late Churchill, because the early one was a big, horrible colonialist before the war, but after fighting off the dictator, the German dictator, he finally saw that. So in other words, governance will always have problems. So it's kind of worse because everybody's the king and queen. Everybody's the sovereign. But all the others are worse because any one person here or there, then they turn and they become monsters. Like China's Xi Jinping. I love Xi Jinping. I still do, but I'm really mad with him and I've given him up. I loved him because he was, I froze again, stop that. I loved him because he was the son of a Chinese early revolutionary hero who became a close friend of the Dalai Lama when the Dalai Lama was 19, and he was brainwashed by Mao down in Beijing for 11 months in 1954. And so Xi Jinping's father, Xi Zhongsheng, was friendly to him. And Xi Jinping was born 1 year before that in 1953. He's a snake eater like me. And he's a wood snake, I think. Yeah, wood snake. And I'm an iron snake. Look out, Xi Jinping. Anyway, never mind. And so I was trying to think he's going to be the one to shatter his crown, the crown of the dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party, because he has this connection with his father, who loved the Dalai Lama, who is the arch supporter of democracy, actually. Himself, the Dalai Lama is. He was a king who was always giving away that kingship to everyone. And although he even formally did it in a modern democratic style recently, but anyway, he understands the value, the importance of it, because it's right there in Buddha's Genesis story, the Aganya Sutta, how everyone is equal. They all come from a certain angelic form, all beings, including non-human ones. But anyway, that's a side issue. But the point is, but now I think he's been possessed by some demonic version of Mao, actually. I really do. And he's cracked down on Hong Kong, and he's just going crazy to be like the isolated dictator and swallow his own crown, choke on his own crown. Terrible. But I do love him. He's somewhere in there. He's a jolly fellow. But I'm sure he was blessed at the age of 1 by the 19-year-old Dalai Lama. I have no doubt. So anyway, it's both, okay, Kelly? So don't worry. And what else? You think others will be more powerful in meditation by for a believer, like meditation on God, nature? Well, no, I think both can be equally powerful in the sense that, for the question above that from Lawang, in other words, all the mystics, like John, the Testament of John, of the four Gospels, Gospel of John, he says, God is love. God is the Word. God is love. So, and all the Christian mystics and Sufi mystics and Jewish mystics, they all get to a point where they definitely see through the projection of a humanoid patriarch onto the divine. And they realize that what the divine is beyond comprehension in any kind of like idol like that. That's really what the anti-idolatry precept is about. And the great innovation of the Hebrews was the realization that God is beyond. And they had a name that you couldn't pronounce, YHWH, which has no ordinary vowel in it. So you can't say the name, because when you name something, it gives the ignorant human being who's always projecting their ignorant sense of isolation on others, and they think they own something if they can name it. But you can't own the divine, because it's an infinite power of love. We call it clear light of the void. And of course, clear light of the void is everything, so it also is every individual. But it is all of them, not just one, as opposed to others. And it's the ground under their feet, and it's the air around them, and everything. This clear light is the deepest, inconceivable nature of reality. It's the nirvanic bliss, freedom, reality of all life. And it actually, living beings touch it in the moment of death. They kind of like a loop through it, and they are recharged with that infinite energy, but then they express that charge in a new embodiment, depending, unfortunately, too much on self-limitation and fear and some kind of misguided instinct often. So, unfortunately, so then you have suffering, But there is no suffering ultimately. Even death is the infinite life force. That's the whole thing. That's clear. But you can only express that as an opening. By saying that, doesn't catch it because it's inconceivable, okay, and inexpressible, and that's a scientific discovery, a reality discovery, not just a dogma, okay. So I forgot what we were saying there, but so therefore, so in the monotheistic traditions, including Indian monotheism of either Shaivism or Vaishnavism or Shaktiism, of the three kinds that are more prominent there. And they have Christianity, Islam, Zoroastrianism. India has a melting pot of all religions, actually, that exist on earth. There are Chinese people there too, with Confucianism and Taoism. And they all those monotheistic mystics, they look for the tribal version of God as a sort of person with a name. But then they find that the heart of that being is just the same as themselves. It is freedom, bliss, indivisible, infinite love and compassion and creativity, and also peace and non-interference and non-violence and gentleness, safety and security and so forth. Everything good that you can imagine, total goodness. And they all discover that beyond personality. And then this is why they feel such mystics will feel so exalted, because they will realize that God was always in them. And they realize their own oneness with that kind of a God. So there it can be just as freeing to see it as clear light of the void, and as Shiva or Vishnu or Yahweh or Yahuwah or Yehu, or whatever the name of the Abrahamic, or Allah or Jehovah or whatever it might be. But then some people will not, they'll be stuck, they'll make a mental idol in their mind that is just my God, the one I have a name of, and that is sort of the guarantee of my special chosenness and my tribe and my people, and other people don't have it, and so on. And then those that they're shortchanging themselves, and they're shortchanging God with that one. And they will block them from really finding the inner bliss. They'll be accused by some radical dogmatic theologians of the pantheistic heresy. What they call that is to say the idea that God is everything. But of course he is. Of course God is everything. He, she, it is everything, naturally. It makes no sense otherwise. But they make it into a heresy because they want to keep this kind of hierarchy, you know. They feel that the tribal God, who's sort of the super king on top of themselves as a king, and their personal ego as the king, they think that's essential to keep that all in place, and they'll stone you to death if you don't agree. And therefore they are oppressive. But the thing is, they also are oppressed by that. And that turns them into being oppressive. And then once they're oppressing you, then they feel alienated from you and they feel afraid of you. And so then they're unhappy. And then since they behave like that to you, they are behaving like that to themselves. And they're afraid of themselves. So we have to go beyond this tribalized idolatry, mental and conceptual and spiritual idolatry of thinking we can own God because we're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Shaivite or a Vaishnavite or whatever any other variety that we might be trying out. Okay? We don't own God. And God doesn't choose to own us. God wants us to be free. His freedom would be, if you own something or someone, then you're not free either. You know, the ownership thing is a distortion of relationships. Each one is free, and therefore each one can receive the free generosity of each other one, and the love, and the compassion, and the tolerance, and the creativity, and the blah, blah, blah. All right? So happy Independence Day. Happy we have reached the third stage in American history, which was the stage of all humans are created equal, is our vow. And we not only expand men to include women and to include all types of humans, but also to include all life forms. They're all equal. Created, yes, they are created equally by their own delusion of themselves as something separate from everything else and in the negative way of being created. And they're created by their own bliss and freedom out of a choice to participate in the beautiful interdependent dance and embrace and bliss of life. So 2 ways of being created. And the second one is the ultimate one. The earlier one is a little bit illusory, luckily. So the second one is more real, more powerful, more enduring, and more enjoyable than the other one. And so that's the one we're really looking at. Okay? So all the best. I enjoyed enormously. I'm launching my book in a month. I'm launching my Substack, this thing soon, because I want to plant a smile, because I want to wake sweet joy in dens of sorrow and plant a smile in forests of affliction and wake the bubbling springs of life in regions of dark death. And of course, I don't pretend I'm really a Buddha. I don't. So when I say that, of course, I'm thinking of everybody who's unhappy around us in this country now and in the world, and really unhappy in places where they're having famines and wars and terrible. And I really want to wake sweet joy there in those dens of sorrow and plant a smile in forests of affliction and wake the bubbling springs of life in regions of dark death. But all those places, the den of sorrow, the forest of affliction, and the region of dark death, that's my ignorant, habitual identity. When I get stuck and I get stuck in thinking I'm the real thing, I'm the only thing, and blah, blah, blah. I'm the one, in the wrong way. When I'm sort of asserting it. No, asserting it is okay. When I'm clinging to it, grasping it, craving it, instead of enjoying it. Okay? Instead of interbeing it with others. All right? But I can only do that, of course, if I can see everyone else as having those bubbling springs, being those bubbling springs, smiling, having an inner smile, their innermost smile, and having sweet joy in their sweet infant joy, sweet inmost joy in their heart of hearts, all too unbeknownst to them in normal times, in habitual times.
What's the name of that poem, Bob?
It's from William Blake and his collected works. It's in a longer work that is very complex and things. It's like a high moment in it's called The Four Zoas, Zoas. I think it's page 347 in his collected works, as introduced by Harold Bloom and edited by, I think, Penguin, big fat volume, collected poems and writings of William Blake. Okay?
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone, and happy 4th of July. Okay.